Hello, I'm Todd Phillips, the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. We're here today with Madison Gross, the Director of Consumer Insights at CarGurus. The company has done a recent research study into the car buying mood of the public, and I'm sure dealers across the country are very curious about those findings. Madison, can you tell us a little bit about your study and what you've discovered?
Sure. So just a few weeks ago in April, we surveyed 500 Canadian shoppers and focused on their sentiments around car shopping during the COVID-19 pandemic. We were curious to learn both for our own internal purposes and also to be able to share with our customers so that they can make adjustments today and know what to expect from shoppers in the next few months. Of the 500 people who we spoke with, 59 intend to purchase a vehicle in 2020, and the remaining had initially planned to, but have delayed their purchase. Overall, the main finding from the study is that while we're certainly seeing that auto sales are delayed, and of course we're seeing that across the industry right now, 87% of respondents said that they expect to purchase later than they initially planned to. But only 6% of those who were planning to buy this year before the pandemic have now delayed their plans indefinitely, meaning they don't have a plan for when they'll purchase a vehicle. So, well, there's a lot of uncertainty around when things will return to normal, but we do expect that eventually, when business starts to happen again in a more normal way, that most consumers will come back to the marketplace.
Well, that's good news for dealers. I'm sure they're waiting. Their dealerships are starting to open up in different waves across Canada now as we speak. Certainly Ontario's opened up today or yesterday, and in terms of more sales. Quebec is starting to open up. What about sort of this sense that we've been hearing a lot, and we've been talking about a lot in some of these video interviews? There may be a chunk of the population who want a car more than ever because of maybe heightened fears of public transit, heightened fears of shared ride-sharing experience with Uber or Lyft, something like that. Is there any evidence that consumers are actually looking to purchase a vehicle that may not have been in the market?
There is, and in fact, that's exactly how I think of it. There's people who had planned to buy, and we want to understand whether they still plan to buy. And then there's the opposite side, which is people who had not planned to buy, but now do. And we saw that 60% of those people who are currently planning to buy a car in 2020 had not planned to buy before the pandemic. And there are a couple of main drivers. The first, as you mentioned, is expectations around how people will use taxis, rideshare, and public transportation. Around half of people who previously used those services now expect to decrease their use or stop using them entirely when things get back to normal. And as a result, we expect to see people driving the cars that they currently own more, maybe putting them back into the market sooner than they would have been otherwise. And actually a good portion, it was 42% of those who said that they'll rely on those services less, expect to purchase a vehicle as a result of that.
Well, that's definitely good news for dealers. What that also means is these 16% may not have been in market, so they're going to be contacting dealers sort of for the first time, and their first really experience with them will be sort of through their websites, very, very likely, because they're coming across them for the first time in the midst of the pandemic. One thing I wanted to dive in a little bit into the numbers. We're going to get to that in a second. But it's sort of the sort of uncertainty. We're in such an uncertain time. People don't know when their jobs are going to be back, when their business might be open. They don't know about their own financial situation. So I'm sure you've measured sort of that degree of anxiety, uncertainty. What does that look like in terms of the mood of the Canadian, population?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that there's not really a consistent answer when we ask people, when do you expect things to return to normal? 23% said that they expect things to return to normal within 3 months, 57% within 6 months. But their expectations for when they'll purchase actually line up really closely with when they expect things to return to normal. So using 6 months as an example, 57% expect normal economic activity in 6 months, and 53% plan to purchase within 6 months. So there's not agreement on exactly when it will come back, but it really aligns closely with people's purchase plans. And in the meantime, people are actively shopping online. We saw that even among people who said that they delayed their purchase, over 2/3 are actively researching online right now.
Well, it's interesting because there are going to be very good incentives coming into the market as well. Plus, there'll be this heightened demand. Dealerships are going to be opening. So, what can you tell us about their shopping behavior? Maybe by way of that, what do dealerships start to need to think about now in terms of making sure the digital presence is up to speed? Also, you've got new people, as I mentioned earlier, coming to the market perhaps for the first time. So, when they first arrive on that dealership website, what kind of things are they looking for? Do you think from a shopping experience?
Sure. So I'll mention two things. First is, you just said people might be coming into the market expecting incentives right now, and that's true. We saw that 35% of 2020 shoppers say it's actually a good time to buy because they expect to see deals that aren't usually available. And particularly for new cars, we're seeing some pretty incredible incentives around financing right now. So I think shoppers will be expecting to see information about the incentives that are available to them. And secondly, it's always been the case, but even more so today, that shoppers are doing their research online first. We see that typically shoppers use many different types of websites, but the most commonly used category of site is listing sites like ours, but also like our competitors. So I think the key is that you need to be where those shoppers' eyeballs are. That includes listing sites as well as, of course, your own dealership's website.
Well, that's good advice for sure. Now I'm going to push you maybe outside your comfort zone because you're a researcher and you like to stick to that. And I don't want to get you too far into sort of the area of opinion. But obviously, the whole digital journey that customers are expecting and are going through, dealers are adapting on the fly to offer more contactless service, contactless sales, and certainly the whole digital retailing experience. Being able to research a lot, not necessarily all the way through to online procurement, that last step. I mean, that is going to be available. That's not necessarily the focus, but just the journey itself. What do you think dealerships need to do to really make sure it is that great experience for their customers?
Yeah, we actually saw that openness to purchasing online roughly doubled from 31% to 62% before and after the pandemic. So certainly people are much more open. Now, if you ask me, maybe 6 months down the line, do I think that the numbers will stay that high? I would say my expectation is that they will moderate somewhat when things return to normal, but that we will be shopping in modified ways for quite a while, whether that is wearing masks when we visit dealerships, scheduling appointments online to make sure that we can limit the number of shoppers who are in the dealership at one time. Things like relying on virtual appointments. We're seeing some dealers have a lot of success with a video walk around of a car that a shopper is interested in. So I expect that some of those things will be sticky. And in the meantime, CarGurus has created a product where dealers can indicate which contactless services they're offering. Shoppers on the site then can indicate when they reach out to the dealership which contactless services they're interested in using. So that's an additional service for our paying customers, but at no additional cost. So I think it's a really great way to manage in the interim because we do know that safety is a concern.
Well, great. I appreciate you joining us today, sharing those insights with dealers. Certainly a glimmer of hope in there, certainly a new normal, a change of pace and a change of the way the business is going to run. But and I'll be really curious to see these numbers, as you say, over time, if they hold up, what changes. But thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm sure dealers will be taking some notes on that 16% of new people coming to the market that may not have been in the market before. Who's going to reach them first? So now the game is on to make sure that all dealers are bringing in these new customers. So thanks for that today.
Absolutely glad to be here. And I'm just as curious as you are to check in on the numbers a few months down the line.
All right. Well, maybe we'll regroup then. That's all for today. Thank you, Madison. Okay. Signing off.